Okay. Hi, guys. Oh my gosh. I'm so nervous. Well, I'm nervous, but I'm also really excited. I'm Naya. I am 24 years old. And I'll get into a little bit more of and about me and all that. But just wanted to come in here and introduce myself. This is my first time filming a podcast ever. So it's going to take some time. It's going to take some getting used to, all that stuff. But I really want to thank you if you decided to click on this video, I want to thank you for clicking on it. I want to thank you in advance for your patience with me as I talk through everything that I want to hit on. And yeah, let's get into it. Okay, so first, I probably should have started with this, but it's okay. We're learning. We're learning. So first, I just want to welcome you guys to the Gentle Flutter. This is something that has been, I feel like, a long time coming. Not necessarily even like the podcast itself, but like just kind of all things self love journey, all that kind of stuff. So in this podcast, we're going to explore a lot of different topics. This is going to range, of course, from self-love. That's kind of like our main kind of concept, main idea here. But along with self-love, we'll be talking about healing your inner child, discovering your authentic self, embracing change, transformation, solo date, solitude, all things self-love, self-transformation will be covered in this podcast. So I'm very, very excited. Okay, so first, we're going to get into why is it called the gentle flutter? Where did that name come from? What does it mean? All that stuff. Okay, so the name is when I like describe it to myself, I always describe it as twofold. So, and by that I mean that it kind of has like this kind of two similar but like I guess separate parts to it. The first part is butterflies. I mean, obviously this huge symbol of transformation. I've always been super inspired by butterflies. I always like I'm that person that if I see one like flying around, I'm going to see it as a sign like okay, my transformation, like change is coming, all that great stuff. So, yeah, that's like I mean, when I was thinking about names for this podcast and just what I wanted to be about, that was like one of the first things that came to mind was like, okay, butterflies. Like I'm experiencing transformation right now, or at least I'm trying to. That's like the journey I want to go on, and that's really what I want this podcast to be about. So yeah, that's like kind of one part of the name. Butterflies flutter, obviously. So but then we have this other kind of part to it that's also related because it covers the butterfly effect. Which, if you don't know, I have some notes written down. I mean, I know what it is, but I feel like sometimes I can kind of ramble, so I want to make sure I like am very succinct when it comes to like what I'm trying to say it is. So, the butterfly effect. It's this idea that a very small change in the initial conditions of a system can lead to drastically different outcomes later on. And so it kind of surrounds this metaphor where it's like a butterfly flapping its wings can cause a tornado that's like super far away from it, but this like super tiny thing of like one butterfly just fluttering its wings can like cause this thing like on the other side of the world. So let's relate that into us as humans. It's really what this podcast is all about. Like these little tiny moments of transformation, these little tiny changes that we can make on our day-to-day life that can eventually lead to huge transformation, huge change. I mean, if you know what they say, like if you don't love yourself, like what's kind of I mean, no one says like, oh, what's the point of anything? But that's kind of how I view it. It's like if I don't have true love for myself, for who I am, and of course, it's not always going to be a perfect love. It's not going to be a very linear journey. It's going to be all over the place. But if I'm not at least working towards loving who I am and my journey, then yeah, I mean, not much else matters, I would say. That's kind of where everything starts, I feel like. So, yeah, I mean, that's another I mean, I'll get into all the reasons why I wanted to start this, but that's kind of just like the start of why I wanted to do this podcast. It's just such a important thing, like self-love. I know we hear about it a lot, but we're really going to be going into what exactly it means, what it means to me, what it's looked like in my life thus far, what it's looked like in my life when I haven't had self-love, all the things we'll be talking about. So, yeah. And again, I do just want to reemphasize, it's going to be a little bit all over the place. But that's okay. This is the first episode. I'm sure the first few episodes it's going to be everywhere. I'm still learning. Again, this is my first time, and I'm part of this self-love journey is giving myself the space and the time to grow and to learn to how to really be like patient with myself. So that's all a part of it. So yeah. Okay. I'm going to try to like sit back a little bit. I feel like I'm like very tense right now. I want to get comfortable, you know? So yeah. Okay. So that was my little introduction. Sorry if you keep seeing me look at my screen here. I'm just kind of, I have some notes so that I stay on track. I don't want to make the episode super long. None of my episodes will be, I think, more than like 30 minutes. I'm definitely going to try to keep it within a shorter time range. But then on top of that, I also don't want to record for super long because then it's going to be like longer to edit. So I really just want to kind of do it so that what I record is like pretty much what I'm posting. So yeah, if you see me kind of looking at my screen, that's all I'm doing. Okay, so let's get into it. Why am I doing this? I know I talked about it a little bit, I touched on it, but just want to go into more specifics. So let's talk about my own self-love journey and what that's looked like for me a little bit. I mean, we're not going to cover everything in this little episode, but as you learn more about me and as I record more episodes, as you watch more episodes, we'll learn some more, you know? So, okay. I feel like the start of this journey started where all things and all journeys start, as a kid, as a child, as a little girl, you know? I was a child who, again, like most kids, you know, I really wanted the approval of my parents. I mean, specifically my dad, I'll say. My mom, I felt like I definitely got it. She's very loving, and my dad's also very loving, but I did feel growing up a lot that I didn't have his approval. And that caused me to constantly want to seek it in ways that, like, of course I didn't realize at the time, especially as a young child, you know, you're not necessarily thinking that way, but looking back on it, I'm like, yeah, that was something that was really important to me. Constantly, yeah, seeking that approval, seeking that validation that I didn't always feel like I got. And you know, I'm not putting that on him. I'm not blaming him for that. I mean, that's kind of why it is so important for us to love ourselves, because, you know, that's not anyone else's responsibility. You know, I don't think it's his responsibility to, you know, make sure that, well, I don't know. It can get a little complicated, but, you know, it's my job as someone who's taking care of me to make sure that I am feeling validated by me. But of course, again, we're talking about young Naya, you know? Oh, did I mention my name is Naya, by the way? I don't know if I did. Again, this is everywhere, but it's okay. I just want to start. My thing is, like, once I start, I'm good. But I needed to record this first episode, get the momentum going on this channel, and then we'll improve. But you're seeing the real me, raw me, so it's fine. And then you can decide if you actually want to, like, stick around or not. So it's fine. But yeah, okay. Sorry. Anyway, back to it. So yeah. That was something that was very important to me. Didn't always feel like I got it. And I do feel like that kind of carried over into my friendships, as well as any romantic situationships that I had in college. You know, going off to college, that was, yeah, of course, like most people, that was like my first time away from home. I had been away from home before, but not to like that extent. Like, you know, this is years, you know, out of the house. And it was kind of, I guess, my first time that I became aware to me how much I seeked approval from others. Was like being outside of the house, away from my dad, and being surrounded by people who were my friends and people I liked, all that kind of stuff. Great people, but there was always something in the back of my mind that wanted their approval. And again, this is not stuff that I realized at the time. This is all reflection, you know. Maybe I did realize it like towards the end of college, but definitely not like when I first started. So what exactly would that look like? For me, that would look like, you know, definitely people pleasing. I was a huge people pleaser. I won't even say was. I still am, I think, but it's definitely not to the same extent that it once was, which is good. But for me, that would look like, let's say I was tired, like super tired, but my friend wanted me to like help her study for a test. But let's say it's like 12 a.m. at night, like midnight, you know, and we should all be asleep. Instead of like doing what's best for me and taking care of me, I would stay up. I would help them study, you know, I would, and you know, study, but even if they just wanted to talk, you know, something like that. Stuff where it's like, okay, this can wait till tomorrow, but because, you know, when you're a people pleaser, when you're constantly seeking that approval, you're not really thinking logistically. Yeah, you're not thinking with logic. You're thinking like, in that moment, even though you're not consciously thinking, oh, in this moment I want to please this person, that may not be a conscious thought, but it is a subconscious thought. Like that's the reason why you're kind of doing these things. It's like you don't want that person to not like you or to see you as less than or to not want to be friends with you because of this thing. So that was something I really struggled with, and it really did. I won't say it had like a detrimental effects, but I mean, I guess it kind of did, because it's like it kind of spiraled a little bit, like the constant people pleasing, constantly trying to like make sure that people liked me, really making sure that I was well liked. Like it really resulted in me doing things that I probably shouldn't have been doing, and that I didn't even want to do. But again, because I wanted people to like me, that was super important for me. So yeah, that's mostly for friendships, I would say. But then also, even with like exploring romantic situationships and all that during college as well, it was like, again, it's kind of the same thing with friendships. Like, this constant thing to like want to be liked by the other person, wanting their approval. Um, yeah, like just always in the back of your mind wanting that validation. And for me, I realized like it really was a problem, because I realized how much like affirmation I needed from others. And we're going to get into like words of affirmation and like the love languages. This just came to mind, sorry, but like that'll be at a later episode. This is more so me saying like I felt like I constantly needed them telling me how much they liked me, or like, that they thought like physically I was beautiful or whatever it was. You know what I mean? Like it was more so that kind of validation, which I feel like is very different than like the love language. You know what I mean? It can, oh, maybe it's not different, but this was in an unhealthy way. I'll just say that. So yeah. Okay, so yeah, it definitely, this approval, this need for validation definitely carried over into these romantic relationships and some of these friendships. Um, and then, what happened? The pandemic struck. That was during my time in college. I spent a year, my freshman year of college on campus, and then towards the end of my freshman year is when the pandemic happened. So yeah, I was home, and now everything kind of changed again. The way that everything shifted when I went off to college, everything shifted when I came back home. And you would think that during this time, I would take these years, because it ended up being like years, like 2 years, for me, not for everyone, but for me, that I was home. You would think, being in solitude, having my own time, my own space, all of that, that I would really take that time to work on myself, to really explore self-love and what I want, and just take a break from the people pleasing, because I wasn't really around people, except for like my family. Um, but that didn't happen, and that's okay. That didn't happen. I feel like the people pleasing almost like skyrocketed during that time, and let me explain how. So, obviously I'm at home. My group of friends that I had in college, we were all pretty much like STEM majors. So we all majored in like either bio, I think one was like math, chemistry. Like we were all like the STEM kids, science, technology, engineering, and math. So, we would help each other out with like homework and stuff like that, especially, during the pandemic, everything was virtual, it made things definitely a lot easier. And there were just so many times I was like getting together for assignments. And like, of course, you want to use your friends, and like you want to help each other out, especially when it comes to school and all that. I'm not going against that, but it was almost, we were meeting like so much. I felt like I was with them more than I was on campus, because I don't know, I guess because it was virtual, we were like doing so much to help each other out with school, which was great. Again, that's good, but it was kind of over the top. And then on top of that, we would also just like talk for hours on like Zoom. And I feel like this is coming off as like, oh my gosh, I don't like these people. It wasn't that, but it definitely was that like I wanted my own time, and I felt like I really did not get that during the pandemic, because I just wouldn't say anything. Like if we were on FaceTime or Zoom or whatever for like 3 hours, I don't even like talking to people for that long amount of time. I love people, don't get me wrong, but like I find that like after, a little while, I'm just kind of ready to be by myself a little bit. So, but I wouldn't say that. It was almost like I was like I don't want to say slave. Um, what is the word that I'm looking for? Like basically I'm trying to describe that like I was I'll just use, no, I'm not gonna use that word. Hmm. I felt trapped. There we go. Let's just say that. I feel like I felt trapped on my own phone. I think because we were away from each other, we weren't together and we didn't know when we were going to be together again, because at that time we didn't really know what was going on. We almost like compensated for that by talking way more than we would if we literally, lived around each other on campus like we did our freshman year. So I think since we overcompensated for that, we were like, it was just so much talking, so always like calling each other, all this stuff. And that would have been fine if I actually wanted to talk to them that long, but I really didn't. Like, I did at some points, like maybe after, we help again for a project or an assignment or whatever it is, or just to like do a check-in. But like, this was like hours, like us not even sleeping, us staying up, playing Among Us, all this stuff that like I didn't really want to do, but that I stayed in because I was trying to people please. So yeah, sorry, I was talking about that for a while, but I do just want to emphasize like the fact that that would have been such a great time for me to do some self-reflection during those years at home, during the pandemic, during quarantine as a whole, and I didn't use it for that, but instead it kind of forced me even further down, further into people pleasing. I think it's really important, and it's a really important part of my journey. So that's why I talk about it. That's why I wanted to make sure I explain that. Okay, so what are we going to talk about next? So yeah, that's kind of where like I feel like this journey, those are kind of like the starting steps for this journey. That's kind of like the reasons why I wanted to start this. Childhood, always seeking validation, that carrying over into adulthood, into college, into romantic situationships, into friendships, all that stuff. And now, it's something that I'm like, okay, I feel like I'm finally ready for it. It's something that I always had in the back of my mind, like going on this journey. What even does journey mean? We kind of have to, we'll talk about that too. I mean, I keep using that word and I feel like we throw that word around, but what exactly does that mean? For me, I think it means like being more intentional about my time and my energy and my thoughts and my reflections of myself and how I approach things, how I approach the world. For me, that it's really about this intention, because I feel like I've always like, we always, I feel like, want to love ourselves. Like that's a part of, I think, being human, hopefully, is that you want that love for yourself. But are you being intentional about the steps you're taking to get there? And I feel like I'm finally at a place where it's like, okay,